Is a football Friday, even though it's not leading into a weekend Sunday game. We know what it's leading into an eventual game called Super Bowl 57 between the Eagles and the Chiefs, and a lot of people are talking about it, including your two buddies, Mac and Mac, John McMullen and Jody McDonald. Had a chance to hear from some Eagle players yesterday. Andy Reid spoke about the fact that he might be down one of his key wide receivers for the big game. And everybody else is chiming in, Johnny Mac, which we're going to chop up over the course of the next 2 hours. We'll be joined by Mike Gill from the Sports Bash, Dave Zangaro from NBC Sports Philadelphia. So a lot to do over the next 2 hours. Those who were made available to you guys as Eagle beat writers yesterday. Anybody say anything awe-inspiring, shocking, made you take notice, or just another here's what we think about the upcoming game session?
Yeah, it's one of those, Super Bowls. So you have all these narratives, and Jalen Hurts obviously got asked about the first time two African American quarterbacks will be starting the game. So you have all those stories. The two youngest quarterbacks, when you compare them, not youngest, but tandem youngest to start a Super Bowl. Dual threat. How many people say, "Oh, dual threat option can't win a Super Bowl"? Well, those people are hanging on for dear life. So you have all those narratives. AJ Brown talked. He and Willie Gay of the Chiefs went to high school together, so that's an interesting. They won a state championship. Played at Ole Miss and Mississippi State, so they had the Egg Bowl rivalry. Now they're good friends, having an NFL Super Bowl rivalry. So that's a pretty cool story. Brandon Graham talked about the and I'm glad he did. He talked about the original Nick Sirianni, the initial Nick Sirianni presser that we all talked about, and he got so much criticized for. By the way, Nick, if you're watching this, I talk to Nick all the time. A lot of the media were really, really fair to you. It wasn't the media. Well, I'm not going to say everybody, but these two guys gave you a chance. Said, "Let's give you a chance." But he used that, and Brandon said that's when he won him over, because a lot of coaches would have pretended it didn't bother him, but it did bother him. And he's mentioned that in the past before, but not on the record. So some interesting things. I haven't really delved into the game all that much yet, but you mentioned Mecole Hardman. It's looking like he's not going to be able to play. He's got a core muscle injury. For whatever reason, receivers, a lot of Deshaun Jackson similarities. Remember when Deshaun had that injury, tried to come back, played, I don't know, a few plays and was back out. Same thing with Mecole Hardman. So Eagles getting a break. That's a pretty dynamic player. Not consistent, but home run hitter that can hurt you in those types of ways. So that's a big break. And but we got a whole week to talk about the game. Unfortunately, it'd be nice.
The reason why I don't think the Hardman thing is a big deal is he hasn't played months.
No,
he came back,
he just
played
came
a
back.
handful of plays in a championship game, and he was back out again. So it was like, oh my God, you're subtracting this from the offer. Well, they haven't had it for 2 months.
Yeah,
they
I think he missed 7
and put up big numbers without Mecole Hardman. So yeah, of course it's better for the Eagles that he's not in than he's in, but it's not like, oh my God, the Chiefs are doomed because they don't have Mecole Hardman. They haven't had him for months.
No, 7. I think he missed 7 games, and he came back for 15 plays, and he was out again. So yeah, they know what it's like to play without him. But I assume they, we're excited to get him back, and it didn't last long for him, and they're banged up at receiver as a whole. So would have been nice from their perspective to have that extra body, but yeah, they've done just fine without him. I'm not going to say he's a foundational piece for them.
If the Eagles lost, say, Devonta Smith, that would be a huge loss because he's been a massive part of their offense all year long. Mecole Hardman, because of injury, hasn't been as big a part. And, by the way, just so we get on the record, you can say your also. when Nick Sirianni had an opening press conference, I went on the air and said, that wasn't good.
No, it wasn't good.
But I didn't say, oh, my God, the Eagles have screwed this up. They need to start looking for a new coach now. No, I said, let's let him coach a couple of games before we have a final decision on whether he should be the Eagles coach. What do you think, Eagle fans? And there were those in the media who took it a bit further than I did. But Eagle Nation, Eagle fans were up in arms that you got a guy fumbling and bumbling to his first press conference. And there were some that were ready to push him out. So just so we're on the record about that. If it was brought up again, if Brandon Graham appreciated the fact that the coach showed his human side by being ticked off that he was overly critiqued for his first one. Good on Brandon. Good on the coach. And good on the coach because he's ready. I know you guys got a chance to talk to me the other day. That's the thing that came across for me was the fact that he was relaxed. He was ready, that this thing is not going to be too big for him. I think it is an advantage for the Chiefs with more players that have been there before. The coaching staff, certainly just a couple of years removed from it. And the Eagles coaching staff, led by Sirianni, have not had this experience. Well, you couldn't tell. It's so funny because you compare what he looked like the other day with what he looked like at his first press conference. Nervous as all get out. Oh, my God, too big for the moment. He looked like a guy who was calm, cool, and collected, getting ready for the biggest game of his life.
Yeah, it's funny how that works. And they were both on Zoom. Remember, that was virtual earlier this week. We were still in the sort of back end of the pandemic era when he was hired. So I think that's part of it. Like if Nick's in a room with you, he's going to win you over. He's one of those guys. Through a screen, it's a little bit more difficult. And obviously he was nervous. And why shouldn't he be nervous? And yeah, it could have went better. But at the end of the day, I think most of us, not all of us, but most of us said, well, who cares? It's an introductory presser. Is he a good football coach? I had no idea at the time.
We'll wait and see.
Yeah, and we'll see. And by the way, when they started 2-5, there were some issues and some question marks. But man, ever since that 2-5 start, I don't know. Do the math. They were 9-8. So what? That's 7-3 plus what 16-3. That's pretty stinking good.
Yeah,
that's pretty stinking good. And if you take out the Jalen Hurts injured games, it's even better. I mean, there's not much to complain about at this point.
If you are, you're just a Negadelphian, which I don't think we have much of. Those people are in hiding this week leading into this game. I did see this checked in a couple of different places from those who are overtly rooting for the Eagles, and anytime the Eagles are slighted in the smallest of ways. Some of the complaints leading up to this game and this entire season are well worth noting. The whole Jalen Hurts isn't going to get the MVP because he got hurt. Well, I'm sorry about that, but that's just a fact. That's not an opinion. That's not a we're being disrespected kind of thing. That's just the way that award goes. Old axiom of your most important ability is availability holds true at MVP voting. And unfortunately, not Jalen's fault, but he got hurt and he missed 2 games. He came back and the Eagles won, but he didn't look great in the last regular season game. And the importance of the game when you haven't locked things up get bigger with each game at the end of the season. It's going to cost him the MVP. Mahomes is going to win the MVP. But Jalen could get the more important, or at least as important, MVP. That would be of the Super Bowl. And I did check the odds this morning, John. He is the actual favorite. Even though Patrick Mahomes is the guy who's been there, done that, the guy who's probably going to take down the regular season MVP, because the Eagles are favored to win the game. Slight favorite, but a favorite just the same. Jalen Hurts is actually the slight favorite to win the MVP. I think that'd be okay with Eagle fans. If he lost the regular season MVP but won the Super Bowl MVP, I think they'd get over that snub of the regular season pretty
well. I mean, Philadelphia fans should know this from Joel Embiid if they follow other sports. I mean, if you don't play, you're not going to win the award. I mean, that's just the way it goes, and that's part of it. And unfortunately, got hurt at the wrong time. Ultimately, it would have been an interesting race. I still think Patrick Mahomes would have won it, but because of how people think of the awards and just going on history, but that's just an opinion. Either way, I say, he played at an MVP level. So that to me is the more important part. And when you're in the conversation, and you're not going to the second hand, you're a good player and you've had a good season. And that's the case with Jalen Hurts, who I would guess would finish number 2, and we'll see how the votes shake out with our buddy Rob Motti. But I would guess it'd be Mahomes 1 and Jalen Hurts 2, but we'll see how it shakes out.
That's exactly how I think it's going to go.
Yeah. As far as the Super Bowl MVP, it makes sense. The quarterback of the favorite team, that's going to be the betting favorite. I mean, that's always going to be the betting favorite. It's always should be the betting favorite. Doesn't mean, other guys can't jump up. We talked about Super Bowl MVPs, some weird ones in recent years, some defensive ones. There's always a chance you make a big splash play that turns the game and you win the award. But if you just want to pick the winner, pick the quarterback of the favorite team, and chalk is a good way to go if you're just worried about the winner.
But you want to know something? I was actually pretty surprised. I was on one website this morning. What would you guess the percentage is of quarterbacks winning the MVP award?
In history?
56 MVPs, 56 Super Bowls.
I would say it's got to be more than half. So I'm going to go 29.
Well, give me
52%.
Well, yeah, it's only 55. I would have thought it would have been even higher than that. I would have thought it would have been more like 70.
Well, I think back in the early days, I think they were more willing to look at other positions. But then again, if you go back to Bart Starr and Joe Namath, I mean, that's 1, 2, 3 as quarterbacks. Cooper Kupp won it last year. I know that. He had 2 touchdowns. I remember Edelman won it, which was kind of a bit of a surprise, especially with Tom there. Talked about Von Miller, Larry Brown yesterday. Desmond Howard won it. I remember that.
Yeah.
He had the kickoff return. So yeah, I mean, it's possible. One game, like if the NFC Championship game was the Super Bowl, Haason Reddick would have been the MVP, I would think.
Oh yeah.
So you never know.
And I was just a little surprised. I thought it was a little bit more lopsided for the quarterback, specifically in this era, as you say, because the running backs have become an afterthought. If Miles Sanders jumps up and rushes for 125 yards and pulls down that trophy, that would be saying something, because you got to go back to Terrell Davis the last time a running back won the MVP
he deserved
award.
it too. He deserved that MVP.
That's been a couple of years ago, but Jalen is the slight favorite over Patrick Mahomes, the same way the Eagles are the slight favorite over the Chiefs at this time. Both teams are getting their chance to get their thoughts in and points in before it starts, and their practices in, and the injury reports are in. Can we judge anything by these injury reports to walk through, Johns? It looks like the Eagles are in tremendous shape and ready to go. I guess the biggest question is, and it could be huge, who will punt for the Eagles in Super Bowl 57?
Well, I think it's going to be Aaron Cepas. I really do. I mean, they wouldn't have started his practice window if they didn't want him to punt. It's interesting. I look at Brett Kern's numbers yesterday. They're not that bad, but for whatever reason, it comes across as he hasn't done well. And Cepas, no one liked him until they saw Brett Kern. So
I was going to say, well, which one is it? Nobody likes Brett Kern, or he's not that bad.
I think he's Well, the Tommy Townsend might be the best punter in the league. So if we're going punters, Kansas City's winning the Super Bowl. The good thing is I don't think punters are going to win the Super Bowl. So it's been a weakness for the Eagles all year, comparatively speaking to the other good punters. And that will continue. But, the fact they started his practice window, Aaron thought he was ready to go at least 2 weeks ago. Maybe if he shows up in practice and doesn't look good, maybe they'll stick with Kerm. They got time to make a decision. But I would think they started the window. It's an indication they want him to punt.
Right. Or at least since they have the flexibility, doesn't take up any roster space to activate someone off the IR. A little competition never hurt anybody. Isn't that one of Nick Sirianni's tenets? Competition is a good thing.
Yeah. It's 5 core philosophies. Competition, big one. Connection,
exactly.
competition.
So, if it is in the punt, if it's in the punter position this week, that's a good thing. You don't usually think of that. Oh, who's going to be the punter come Super Bowl? That I don't know if we've ever had that before in the 56 previous Super Bowls. I'm sure it happened once. I just don't remember it. But it could be the return of Aaron Sippers for the Eagles come Super Bowl Sunday. Here's what you have to hope, Eagle fans. It's a complete non-story and a nothing burger.
Yeah, hopefully they don't have to punt. Maybe it's one of those games. So here's Brett Kern, by the way, real quick in the playoffs. 44.1 gross average, not bad. 39.3 net, not great. 3 inside the 20, 1 touchback. He's been fine, but for whatever reason, people have looked at him as some kind of disaster. I haven't seen that. He's not, he's not that kid from Tennessee that outkicks his coverage all the time that he lost out to. That kid's unbelievable, but he's been fine.
Yeah, and he hit a wire, which was
he did hit a wire.
I'm not going to hold that against him. If they replace him, he's going to get a Super Bowl ring if the Eagles win the whole thing. So glad to have you for the couple of weeks we had you, Brett. To be determined. We'll see if that's exactly how it shakes out. He's Johnny Mac. I'm Jody Mac. We're going to have a couple of guests today, see what they have to say about the Eagles Chiefs. And there are a bunch of people that have chimed in across the NFL about this upcoming game. Some pretty interesting, as a matter of fact, that I do want to break down with John. Hoping to do some of that with Mike Gill from the Sports Bash down the shore. Usually Gill hops on a Wednesday. We had some scheduling issues, so he said he can do Friday with us. So I'm hoping to talk to Mike Gill from the Sports Bash up next here on Birds